All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It's great to have you all joining this session. I'm incredibly excited to join this panelists today, and who all bring a vast experience in the revenue operations field, broader data space. Today, Claire, Tom, Ryan, and I are going to talk about revenue operations, more specifically how to set it up and how to scale it. I'm Thomas Anastaselos. I'm the director of revenue operations here at ChartMogul, dealing with all data, revenue operations, of course, processes, and very focused on go to market improvement and setup. Next up, Claire, do you want to go?
Yeah, excited to be here. I'm Claire King, the Associate Director of Revenue Operations at Muck Rack. Muck Rack enables organizations to build trust, tell their stories, and demonstrate the unique value of earned media through its public relations management platform. I've built and scaled our RevOps function and managed the team that owns go-to-market systems, insights, and processes. Happy to popcorn it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Milligan, Vice President of Revenue Operations and Sales at Quotapath. Quotapath automates the process of calculating and paying your team's commissions. So building and deploying your comp plan, pulling from your source of truth, and giving your reps visibility to be able to forecast their earnings overall. I've been at Quotapath for about 2.5 years now. Background in data analytics, primarily connecting data, building SQL-based data systems, and then leading our kind of go-to-market tech stack while also managing our sales team, which is a fun kind of double-edged role for sure. So yeah, happy to jump in, and thank you, team, for having me. And Tom, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm Tom Andrews, Senior Director of Insights and Systems at Pavilion. Pavilion's a global organization of go-to-market leaders and rising leaders. And we offer learning opportunities, in-person networking through our chapters, and all sorts of opportunities to meet, network, and learn from other executives in go-to-market.
Amazing. Thank you all. Maybe let's start with, the main question basically of the topic, which is when and how do you think about building a RevOps function? Like, when is the right time? How do you think about it overall? Ryan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is it's never too early to have a RevOps team. I think if you're selling something in the market, having somebody who has a skill set to build the systems and process and operations is going to be crucial. I kind of consider RevOps to be a bit of an overall all-around infielder at an org that can work on projects far more broad than just your tech stack design. We've led initiatives like pricing and packaging, moving into new markets, moving into new verticals, all things that you as a business have to consider regardless of your stage. So the short answer is you want to equip your go-to-market team to do what their superpower is, which is sell and nurture customer relationships. And then you want to give more of an operations team that ability to work on building the systems and processes to support that group. So it is never too early in my mind to hire a RevOps person. And you have the ability, if you think, okay, I only have 3 sellers, what do I have this person do? There's a bunch of other admin operations of your business, board reporting, measurement, data, what have you, that they can take on as well.
Yeah, totally. I think back to the beginning of my career at early stage startups and more strict sales roles. And I was constantly picking up those ops side projects. I actually didn't know that RevOps was a full function at the time. But so if you take a look around, the reality is someone in your organization is doing some of that work for you if they're not in a dedicated RevOps role, right? So either bringing somebody on in a RevOps role as early as possible is, I guess, ideal for me. But also to your point, Ryan, bringing somebody in maybe in a more, generalist role that has a skill set, maybe selling or the desire to learn, but someone's doing it right. And certainly a RevOps function should be a priority as you begin to see complexities in the go-to-market process and functions. So I guess, yeah, at Muck Rack, it started out as just me and my original analyst, but we kept expanding the team as Muck Rack continued to grow and we see functions and processes require more support at scale. So we added in deal desk and then dedicated CS ops and beyond.
I couldn't agree more. I think especially especially when businesses are starting out in the current economy. Like, it's pretty tough out there to get investment. And normally what we're seeing these days is efficient companies are doing the best. It's companies that are built to scale and they've got all the processes in place. They understand their architecture. They've got good data to report up to the board. And in order to have all those pieces put together, you need someone at least with a RevOps mindset, if not someone whose day-to-day title is RevOps, to help make sure you're building your business properly from day one. And so I think RevOps needs to be one of the first people you're bringing in if you've not got that skill set in your founders. And then I think you need to scale it with the complexity of your org, much to what Claire said. At Pavilion, we have a huge amount of automation, which is what I spend most of my time doing. And so our operations team is about 10% of our overall headcount. I know in some organizations that are more focused on solution selling, that might be a lower percentage, but you still want to see 5 to 10% of your org sitting in the RevOps function to keep the sustainable scaling, keep that scalable mentality in everything you're doing, and making sure there's always someone from that team in the room, because I believe we can contribute to any discussion.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll pick the case that someone is doing it already in most cases, right? I think this is crucial, and it's probably a question of when do you formalize the role rather than when do you start the role, because essentially you need that from day one at the bare minimum. Which brings to like my second question, my second point, which is what are those those specific skills that we need in RevOps, because obviously RevOps require a variety of skills. You need business, you need technical, you need data proficiency, you need a bit of everything. You cannot have everything in, it would be ideal, but you cannot have everything at once. So how do you manage that basically? Tom, you want to go first?
Sure. I think as businesses get more complicated and more technical, and there's more managing parts, like there's so many teams that RevOps touches, you need to create some kind of internal project management framework, and you also need to have some kind of rules of engagement with the rest of the business. I think it's super key for RevOps to take the lead in kind of defining how at least the go-to-market organization, if not the whole organization, is thinking about project management. A lot of is impact assessments to work out, okay, if we do this small thing over there, where else in the business is it going to hit? And most of the businesses that I've worked in, I have always been in startups and scale-ups, haven't had like full-blown PM teams. They've not had people kind of taking the lead there. So as someone who spends their life changing systems and rolling out new processes, I've always tried to lead the way on the change management and make sure that I'm really offering my expertise in, okay, it doesn't matter what process you're building, like this is a good set of steps to think through. Because if you've got all the information, then it just makes all the other pieces a little easier.
100%. And Claire, I remember the other day we were talking about, you've been managing a lot of cross-functional projects, and like how does it all link up together?
Yeah, I see RevOps as uniquely positioned to lead cross-functional projects and initiatives, given our holistic view of the full revenue lifecycle and all the processes. So at Muck Rack, we think of ourselves as internal management consulting. So we manage projects that involve sales, marketing, customer success, and even product and finance teams, IT. So we ensure alignment and collaboration throughout the whole organization. So break down silos, foster better communication, and also really ensure that all of these projects and initiatives are aligned with the overall revenue goals of the company, right? That's the North Star.
I would also say one of the ones that I don't see as much in the RevOps space from a skill set perspective is the analytical SQL writing, data architecture side of the house. I think RevOps is pretty uniquely positioned to actually own all things board reporting and run your board conversations. It's how we operate here at Quotapath. And the reason I like it is because whether you have that skill set or have that skill set on your team or have built that architecture, right? That's kind of what I'm speaking to. But having the ability to own the data from cold email through to your renewal and your funnel adoption process and where you're running into snags to then drive those cross-functional projects like Claire was talking about. Hey, our qualified rate of our demos is dropping dramatically in the mid-market. what are the things that we're going to do to move that metric specifically, right? And I think you have to have, whether within yourself or within your team, a high level of data literacy and data storytelling. And my tip for people joining or starting in the RevOps space is learning how to write SQL. I think, like, but especially as you're at these growth stage scale ups, the data architectures just aren't there. And so your ability to tap into the Salesforce account object in your database and like do a bunch of analysis or what have you, like is massively helpful, whether that's you or someone on your team, is a big one that I think about.
Completely agree. SQL is crucial, like the ability to, not the skill specifically, but the ability to be able, to see yourself at the data and analyze your data, because at some point you don't really know what you need to explore, you need to find out, you need to play with the data set and find yourself. So yeah, couldn't agree more. RevOps traditionally serve a lot of teams. Which are the primary teams that you work with? You're serving data to, serving reports, whatever. And together with that, how can you be proactive about it? Like, what's how can you be, not just delivering something, but actually being there for them? Claire, want to go first?
Yeah, we work obviously with our go-to-market partners, but also really closely with finance as well. So I guess being proactive, to your point, is not just about responding to the issues as they arise, but hopefully being ahead of the curve, in front of the 8 ball. So my team is constantly thinking about how we can be more proactive, involving analyzing data trends, understanding market dynamics, staying ahead of those potential obstacles. So proactive RevOps can identify those growth levers, such as untapped market segments or optimizing lead conversion rates, enhancing customer retention strategies. It's really all about using insights to drive strategic decisions that promote sustainable growth, and that's touching all different parts of the organization.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Claire. Yeah, Tom, any thoughts on the subject?
I feel like what Claire said is bang on, especially kind of being guided by the insight. I think modern businesses generate so much data. Like more data will be generated this year than in the rest of history combined. It's like my favorite thing to quote, whether or not it's completely true, although it probably is. And working with that data is super complicated. And the demand of boards and exec teams for data grows every day, but the comprehension and literacy with data doesn't necessarily. And so I think beyond working with teams, because we do work with every team, like we're responsible for also driving up that data literacy and data comprehension, because I could present a super complicated piece of analysis that I think will change the company. But unless everyone else can get on board and interpret the right things, it's not really going to move the needle. So I'm very fortunate at Pavilion that I sit on our exec team. And so I hear of everything firsthand. And then I'll shoot off messages to people involved in different initiatives and be like, hey, can I sit in on a planning session? Can I listen to this? And I'm always thinking through, how do I make sure that at the end of this, if I need to report on it, we're ready to do that? How do I make sure that with all these initiatives, like I'm double checking, we're not going to accidentally do anything we shouldn't do, or won't break another process, or we won't breach GDPR. You never know. And so by positioning myself as this kind of like strategic advisor, I'm up for anything, just let me know your ideas. It's helped to kind of switch the directionality of that. Everyone now is like, hey, I'm about to do this thing. Do you want to sit in on the first session? So I'll be there and be able to do that. By having those relationships, I think it's really accelerated what we're doing. And I would like to think the whole team has also leveled up. We all now like love diving into the data together and like looking at crazy charts that we've been able to build, and sometimes even send each other charts like, I think I know what this means, but what do you think? And that's been really cool to see, like the development of a data first mindset in the exec team, because I think that's still quite early for most people.
And I think the thing to be really careful of is, I think RevOps in a sales ops rebranded RevOps is like one of the, the old trope about it. I think the thing to be careful about in that role is being just seen as your tech stack admin only. I think the classic thing is, hey, we have 30 tools in our tech stack, like your 10 tools or whatever. Like you are responsible just for adminning them, and that's the job. And that's really not the job, right? The tech stack is a tool to be able to achieve the NRR, GRR, win rate, whatever you need. And I kind of caution my team, like, are these tools helping you do that? Yes or no? And if they're not, just rip them out. Like you're not a glorified systems solely admin. You're like trying to drive, to Tom's point, like a lot of insights about the business. And where I think RevOps is like super uniquely positioned is it is a neutral party in the entire revenue path of the org, and a lot of the classic marketing versus sales versus CS, like finger pointing conversations that happen. And so you are very focused on the revenue growth of the business in a sustainable fashion, and you are responsible to make recommendations that allow you to grow even more rapidly in a sustainable way. And that, like, I tend to like RevOps teams focused on measuring like sufficient sustainable revenue growth and being the trusted advisor to whether on the leadership team or adjacent to it, to give that advice. It's really important.
Absolutely. And I think, from this discussion, like one thing that, sticks to me is you've got so much data, you've got so many tools, you've got so many pieces of information that your role is to consume, understand, make sure that you really grasp, you have your vision, you have your end goal, whatever in mind, and then you need to present the right amount in a nice manner, because you want to create a story, and you want, like, it's not data for the sake of data, right? It's and that goes to the whole tooling situation and your whole data situation, which is also humongous, right? The tool part in the space, every other day you've got so many different tools coming up, and you need to find that balance. You need the tools to help you, but at the same time, you don't want to be overwhelmed by the tools. In our case, in ChartMogul, we have been through a process of like tool consolidation and making the most out of the tools we need without just buying and buying more tools, and it has been extremely helpful for us. Thoughts, anyone?
We're kind of in a similar process right now, and I think what I would say is the way that I think about it is we saw the rise of point solutions to solve discrete acute problems over the course of the past 5 years, and my thinking always was, okay, all these point solutions have boards, and the boards are telling them, hey, you have to start solving more problems. You can't be the size of business you need to be if you just do X. You have to do Y, Z, and what have you. And it was really interesting. What we ended up doing was laying out all of the activities we want to go through in our process, whether sending emails, researching contacts, recording calls on one axis, and then all the tools and kind of the X checkbox of which tool can do what. And it was really interesting, right? We found we had 4 different tools that could send an email, right? And then we had a number of tools that could record a call. And so you kind of have to think through what are the, like, yes, those point solutions were very nice to have when they were initially built, but then you also say, I have reps toggling from tool to tool to tool to tool. I want to move to a system of record and a system of action. Like, I want to have my go-to-market team in one tool that does email sending, account research, call recording, all that sort of stuff from a continuity perspective, so that their flow isn't disrupted by toggling from place to place. So, and it's challenging, right? Because if you're trying to solve one of those specific problems, it makes it hard to compete with tools that are they're kind of doing it all. But I think if you are going to be solving that one kind of acute problem, it's got to be so much better so that you're justifying a team member logging into another tool on top of all the ones that are logging into that.
Yeah, Ryan, to your point, we think about this like metric as fewer clicks, or reps fewer clicks to achieve the same outcome. So yeah, this, and then Thomas, to your point, like the landscape of this great consolidation, and then also AI, it's both exciting and a ton to consider. At Muck Rack, we think about the tech stack as a strategy, and we strive to reduce the complexity, obviously, of managing multiple tools to improve data and the accuracy of our data and the accessibility of our data. So yeah, we've all been in different tools. We've recently migrated, CRM, and like having two tools at the same time and saying two different things is my worst nightmare. Like when the data isn't tying out, I'm just like, please, I'm going on PTO. But yeah, definitely seeing the trend towards consolidating tools. We've been really careful to resist jumping at every shiny new object, those point solutions that promise a lot. But also on the flip side, like we do everything in these giants that, don't do everything kind of well, but nothing very well. So yeah, it's a lot to juggle.
I spend a lot of time managing the total cost of operations of our tech stack, and the total cost of ownership. And so I look at the whole tech stack as like one line item in the budget, and I try and manage it from there. And the more I can do to reduce overall expenditure and increase capability, the better for my KPIs. So for me, we've gone through huge amounts of consolidation. We're a relatively lean team. Easier to hire people with very strong admin certifications in the big platforms and buy add-ons to those big platforms relatively inexpensively, then get best of breed solutions in every single aspect of your stack. So start simple and start small and scale from there. You only need the best tool on the market if you are one of the best on the market. Otherwise, there are easier things for you to do and bigger gains you can make. If you're trying to go from 5% to 10% market penetration, there are thousands of options that are very low cost and some very classic tactics you can employ. If you're at 60% market capitalization and you want to go to 65, then you probably need intent data. You need like multivariate systems. You need super intense data analysis, but you do not need any of those when you're getting started and trying to like build a footprint in a market. I see a lot of founders getting kind of, as Claire said, distracted by those shiny things, and they don't have the restraint. And they'll spend a lot of money on these tools, and then they'll say, hey, like, why am I not getting ROI on any of my technology investments? And number one question is, do you have the technical skills to operate all these shiny tools that you bought? And number two, do you have the time to invest in them? Because something like a Tableau can make an enormous impact on a business, but pretty much needs a full-time specialist to be operating it in order to get a return on the investment. And that's true of most big platforms. So maintain a view of the market that's somewhat cynical and is grounded in like fact and logic, and never believe them when they say it's the silver bullet, because it is not.
Like every new tool you add to your tech stack, there's like so many different costs. There's the financial cost naturally, but even if you get it for free, there's the cost of ownership. There's the cost of reputation with the team, getting the team up and running. Like there's a lot of different discrete costs of bringing in a new tool. And early on in our journey, I mean, you naturally get into like some of the swap scenarios where, hey, you use your tool, we'll use your tool, what have you. And if you haven't done that, like thorough research to see how this tool is going to fit, you're trying to jam a tool in versus a solution to a problem. And that's like the worst outcome to me, where you're not benefiting anyone involved. And then you have these tools in your tech stack that you just have for some reason, which is definitely concerning for your reputation with your go-to-market team as well, which is important.
I'll pick that reputation with your go-to-market team, Ryan, and I think this is huge. For us, at least, it has been extremely important, and because every tool has some ways to, report something in their own different way. It is crucial for us to be able to have consistent data across tools. The primary thing that we're doing right now to solve that issue is to power every tool directly from our data warehouse, instead of having different databases and replicating databases and making sure all data is in sync and all those things. And the whole modern data stack with the data warehouse in the middle is definitely helping towards that. But it's something that we are a much smaller team than you are, but like in the RevOps team. But still, well, I'm facing exactly what you were mentioning there. Great. And on the tool side, the other topic that I wanted to briefly touch is AI, of obviously the big thing of our days. But what are some like, of course it has applications to RevOps, like it has applications to everything, like some cool examples that you have seen, that you have optimized, and out of a sudden you have seen huge improvements with a fraction of the cost, maybe?
I'll happily start here because I love AI. So we're now at the point where we're running about 3.5 million automated operations every 30 days, and it's thank you, it's my big stat, and it's equivalent to 14 headcount by our estimations, which are relatively conservative. So because of the size of our team, that's equivalent to making every member of the team 50% more efficient. So the numbers that you can get are insane, but it requires a deep understanding of what everyone is doing and what those processes are. AI can't solve a problem you don't understand intimately. And if you want AI to start really making a huge impact and multiplying the efficiency of your org, making it feel like a bigger company than it is, as a RevOps leader, you have to be deep inside the data of your processes, know exactly what people are doing, and be ready to like chip apart each little part and throw the AI in. But the truth is, most AI tools out there are in no way orchestrated. They are piecemeal solutions that are stuck together with duct tape. And unless you really understand like data orchestration and how you're taking the data out of your warehouse maybe and throwing it into some little prompt you've just created, taking that and putting it back into another system for it to be sent out through email, you're going to create as many new steps in the process by using AI as you take out by using AI. The one I see everyone talking about is GPTs and generating emails, but the amount of clicks it can take to pull the data out of your CRM, put it into the prompt, get the email, put that back in and send it off is pretty much the same as if you just typed it out as a senior sales rep. And so unless you've got the automation skills and the system skills to do all of that extraction and replacement of the data in situ, you're not going to see an efficiency gain. So for companies that want to really start getting value out of AI, start from really mapping and understanding your processes. Like, make sure I keep saying this, I sound so boring. Make sure you've done the basics. Like, start simple, map everything out, understand your data structure and your data architecture, have process maps of what everyone's doing, and then like highlight in those process maps areas where you think AI can make an impact and start from there. There is no solution on the market that I'm aware of that you can just deploy into a sales organization, for instance, and it starts rewriting everyone's emails. There are solutions you can deploy that take millions of data points to train and require a lot of integration, but those are much bigger undertakings. And by the time you deploy that, you could have deployed a new sales tactic, deployed into a new market, deployed into a new vertical, and all of those might have a bigger revenue impact. So AI should be viewed as a tactic and a tool like everything else in our arsenal.
100%. Thanks for this. I think you are like very much into this.
It's my favorite thing.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
I think it's also helpful to know like what are the types of problems you're trying to solve with AI. What is it particularly good at? And the way that I think about it is categorization of high volumes of data or summaries of text is like a superpower of AI, right? So like, if you know that you have these, if you're finding yourself reading through large volumes of something to derive insights from that something, that is a really good place to inject AI to solve that problem. So we think about that as a function of developing loss reasons, win reasons, churn reasons, like reading through all the emails for an op from a prospect who's evaluating Quotapath, and deriving like the 3 or 4 bullet insights that you want to take into understanding where that conversation went and how it operated. So from a high volume text categorization and summarization is like the primary use case of AI at Quotapath. And that can apply in a lot of different places, whether it's developing churn and loss and win reasons, whether it's summarizing calls to be put into a channel that we can understand what's going on with an open op, or whether that's like writing high volumes of content to then be tailored for LinkedIn posts and SEO and what have you. But I think you really have to. I really liked Tom's point of being super intentional about how you're applying AI, and it's not just like shoving this thing in. Like I feel like when AI first got really popular in the past like year and a half, the question was, how do I use AI? Like, how do I use AI in my system? Which is not the right question. The question is, where am I spending too much time right now? What is a pain point that I have? And could AI help with that? And that becomes a much better application of the tool than, it's like, don't try to bring this thing in for no reason, have a reason and see if the AI could help, is how I think about it.
Spending too much time or not having it at all, and AI enabling it to have. And this is also a bit of a, I keep thinking about this as a product development. Like you have so many things, so many priorities, and you need to understand impact, to understand risk and benefit for the whole organization, because you cannot do everything at once. Claire, how do you go about this? Like, how do you do your roadmap over the next quarter, year, whatever?
Man, always trying to get better at that. We think about getting closer to more of a product management mindset. So that's complete with the roadmap and clear KPIs. That roadmap serving as the strategic plan that outlines all of our many and disparate initiatives by project and projects by quarter. So we've developed our roadmap in close collaboration with our key stakeholders. So that's been hugely important, just to make sure that everyone's bought in, feeling good about everything. And that really helps prioritize initiatives based on potential impact on revenue, operational efficiency, and end user satisfaction. Something that I continue to stress, and that was definitely an early lesson for me in my RevOps career, was working on that cross-functional transparency. So regularly updating the roadmap, communicating those updates to our stakeholders to keep everyone informed and also engaged. And then when you have those rollouts, people are with you. They've been with you all throughout the whole iteration, and even through, and we can talk about that more, but like user acceptance testing and things. So you have your champions as well. So
and a lot of the questions in the chat are about people who are considering starting a RevOps team, or like a team of one or what have you. And the advice I would give there to the roadmap point, which I love, Claire, is like, it may feel a little silly to be building a roadmap for one person, but you as a RevOps person are, the way that you get taken more seriously at your org is if you're pushing more systematized processes within your organization, right? So you might be in a 20-person startup and you're trying to build like a RevOps function and you're a party of one. You should be pushing the rest of your org to what good looks like, generating roadmaps, doing weekly updates, doing the user acceptance testing that Claire was talking about. It may feel a little bit like I'm too early to do this, but you're the one who's setting your org up for scale. And like, you want to do this stuff at 20 people that you'll be happy you're doing when you're 200 people or 2,000 people. And so that's been a lot of like system process stuff is key for any stage of company. And you as a RevOps practitioner or an aspiring one should be leading a lot of those like documentation and systemization processes.
Yeah, that helps get you that seat at the table to be taken seriously. And it also helps you, to call back to a previous question, to be more proactive and not just be the order taker. Like, we've all fielded tons of those questions like, hey, I can't get into Salesforce. But like, being able to also demonstrate the ROI of RevOps, even if it, to Ryan's point, you're just as one person RevOps function at the time. So that, because I think some people get a little scared off by RevOps early because it just seems like potentially like a cost center. So really being able to put forward and then to track through a history of providing growth and support.
Yeah, and it's amazing, right? Like if you go to your CEO and you're like, we need to change pricing and packaging of our product for these reasons, and this is the key takeaways, these are the next steps, this is the data that I'm using, and like present like that type of business case for pricing and packaging or something, like no CEO is going to be like, oh, I wish you hadn't shared this information with me, right? They love that, right? They're going to love someone in the org being proactive about a change you need to make to drive some level of efficiency. And so those are like the mini projects I'd be thinking about as you're dipping your toe into that. Like, we need to consolidate these 5 tools into this one because of this, this, and this. This is the KPI it's going to drive and what have you. And so that's where I push the team to be thinking about that, even if you're just getting started, for sure.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And that actually had, like, my next point has been partially answered through this one, which is how do you manage change? How do you manage adoption by the whole company? Because, some things, sometimes change isn't the place to be. People want to continue doing things the way they did. This part of involving everybody that we discussed just now is one of those things. What else have you seen working, or like avoiding, or how can you optimize this kind of adoption in and change management in the organization?
For me, I think it's sometimes about understanding your audience. Especially sales teams don't always love change, and so I spend a lot of time trying to just be like the ultimate cheerleader and leading huge change from the front and making it as fun as possible, doing workshops, maybe even like going one step beyond user acceptance testing and doing like the final stages of the design or the setup with a couple of the team in the room. And then I think you need to, as much as possible, rally the entire organization around those changes and make it feel like a big step. If it is a big project, if you've just like changed a few things, don't do this. But I've done CRM migrations before, and I've like stopped the whole company for a week and bought everyone cupcakes with the Salesforce logo on, and they've eaten cupcakes and we've all learned Salesforce together, and then we've seen sales go up. And that's not an accident. It's because everyone's re-engaged with the processes and realized that admin is fun. And if you say that enough to people, they will believe you, because it can be fun if you build a really great system. So I think a lot of what RevOps do is like extremely complicated. And as much as we can break that down and break it apart and make it super digestible, really focus on our enablement skill sets, I think that's super key. There's obviously all the more formal parts of management of change, which I'll fully admit are not my strong point, but I will always try and build a comms plan and work through it. I'll try and make sure I've done all the documentation that people will need, although my documentation is quite fun because I'll put words in like, it's super fun how this process works, but people engage with it. And so bringing your own personality into it is a big part of it. I think, to touch on a point from the previous question, that's also part of being taken really seriously and progressing in it, is you need the CRO or the CEO to see you as a strategic advisor to them. And someone who can make positive change that impacts revenue is exactly who they want sitting around their board meeting table and talking to the board about the progress of the organization. So maintaining a laser focus on your impact on revenue, I also think is key. So when you're going through change management processes and launching new things, it's always good to also be saying to people, and we're going to see the success when we see this in the dashboards, or when revenue does this, or when win rate does this. And knowing that up front and telling everyone, like, this will have been successful when this happens, is really powerful, because then for every single person involved in the change, they'll see the day that initiative was successful and they'll be like, wow, that was easier than I thought, or like, wow, that was a really fun journey. And I think that's super key, because you never want people to feel like you're making changes that have no impact. And I've met other RevOps leaders where their impact is like felt but never seen, and it's really important that it's seen, because otherwise, like, how are you going to say, oh, by the way, I need to spend another $250,000 on this new platform? No one's going to give you that. Whereas if you can say, well, last year, we went up 20% in revenue, and most of that growth is down to these initiatives that we ran, and here's the proof of it. So I want to invest $250K and we'll make back 1.3 million. no CEO will say no. They'll be scared and they'll say, you better deliver, but they'll probably be like, yeah, this feels like a worthwhile investment.
I would also push, I love that. And I would also push you to bring individual go-to-market team members along that journey with you in a one-on-one capacity, right? Find, the reps in your org who are the most forward-thinking, who are the most interested in evolution, bring them along in that thought process, whether it's changing a system, changing a model of an approach, changing a market you're going into, and just be really transparent with them about your thought process. Hey, I really think that we need to push more heavily into the mid-market. And this is what I think we're going to do to be successful. This is how we need to change our sales process. Like, how does that feel to you? And give that safe space for that feedback as well. I think a lot of times, I don't know why, but there's like a little bit of a tension between RevOps, especially junior RevOps team members and individual reps. And there's like a little like, do I feel like we're on the same team or not? And I think it probably stems from all of the like field requirements that RevOps makes the reps fill in the CRM or what have you. And they're like, oh, you're making me these like validation rules for years and years. But ultimately, if you're like really transparent with why you're thinking this change makes sense, and this happens a lot with comp design too. Like I like to spend a lot of time with the reps to go through like, here's what we're thinking and here's why, and here are the motivations. Building those champions, both who've been with your company for a long time and also make really good friends with your newest rep. They are the one who is like not embedded in your system as much as possible, and they can give like a purely neutral kind of semi-external view. That's been really helpful for me in building that like rapport and buy-in, right? Because when your sales team goes off and grabs beers without you, you want one person on that team to be like, I actually think this is a really good idea. Ryan walked me through it. Here's why. And like be your champion without you in the room is massively helpful.
Yeah, I would also offer that you all know those people that your internal champions, the easy people to go to get buy-in or be your champion. But also something that I've really worked on and coached my team on a lot is also talking with people who are a little less apt to adopt or a little bit more of a laggard, somebody who's like really been more resistant to change. And because that ultimately ends up being like, you don't want the squeakiest wheel to be, to topple your awesome process or rollout. So, leaning into those people also and winning them over. Also, Tom, to your point, I will hopefully add in more of my pizzazz into my documentation. That's awesome. But also just keeping it fun. And then also on the flip side, FOMO, having people who are like, wait, I didn't get that cupcake. I wasn't part of that one-on-one. I didn't get a one-on-one. How do I get into this special club?
Amazing. Love it. Thanks. Thanks a lot for this. Like, this was, again, super spot on. I've been checking the questions, but I think all of them have been answered. Again, thanks to our amazing panel for answering all those questions. If there isn't any other question that we haven't answered, maybe one last thought, before we close this session, kind of, your advice to a RevOps leader that is, kind of starting up, the one main thing that they would need to focus, pay attention, whatever, the one thing that you would like to advise them. Yeah. Tom, you want to start?
Yes. So it's going to be hard, but it's going to be the best journey of your life. I think the coolest thing about RevOps, and the reason I fell in love with it when I fell into it, I used to be a technology analyst and I was really good at Google Sheets, and a couple of sales managers needed help with forecasting. And then I moved over into RevOps and I stayed ever since. And I think the number one thing to remember is you're often working on problems no one has ever solved before. And you're probably working on them in a company that's probably not got all the answers. And even if you work in a really big company, you're still always going to be blazing new trails and figuring new things out. And it's okay to be afraid and it's okay to be scared. And I've never met a RevOps person not willing to have a chat for a few hours about RevOps. So always contact people you can find on LinkedIn and see if they'll help, because pretty much all of us are open to having a conversation. We're mostly in this to pursue the solutions to the complicated problems we've never seen before. So I think it's a super exciting profession that more people should get into. Just don't get afraid when things don't go perfectly the first time, because they never do.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's amazing. Just stay curious, keep asking questions, keep turning over those stones, and you'll keep coming up with awesome answers that, no CEO again will ever say like, oh, I don't want this insight.
The things I think a lot about, one is operate as if you're multiple stages ahead than you are today. Like build your systems and processes for if you are 10 times the revenue you are today, because you'll blink and you'll be there and you won't be prepared. So treat yourself like you're much further along as a company than you actually are, and treat your processes that way. And then I would say, as a RevOps person, the structured messaging is like the most valuable thing. To Tom's point, you are going to make assumptions that are going to be wrong. But if you make those assumptions and you go to your CEO and you're like, hey, like Quotapath sells commission tracking software. We want to get really into roofing, let's say. Like a lot of roofing teams like do contracting work, which is an example, right? And calculate commissions. And I go to my CEO and I'm like, we have to go all in on roofing. Here's the TAM of the market. Here's the tools that they use. Here's why we were uniquely positioned. Here's the steps that we should do for the quarter, what have you. Let's say we run that experiment and spend some money and allocate, and it doesn't pan out as expected. If I've laid out my assumptions and gotten the rest of the org to agree that those assumptions are reasonable, even if they don't pan out, they can't turn to me and be like, Ryan, you were totally wrong, because we all mutually agreed that like these are legitimate, reasonable assumptions. So structuring your documentation and how you communicate internally with the assumptions you have in place to get alignment checks on those before you go do something is massively valuable, so that when it does inevitably fail, because some things just are going to not go the way that you expected them to, you at least have still that credibility internally that you did the research and came up with an idea, and were structured in your thinking in a way that was helpful.
Amazing. Pure wisdom, everyone. Thank you so much. Ryan, Claire, Tom, thank you so much for this. And also thanks to the audience for the good questions, thoughtful questions that they had, their attendance. It's been great. Thanks again. And have a great day, evening. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.